there's a lot of emphasis on China's military capabilities. I think since President Xi Jinping took over with this whole wolf warrior diplomacy, as it's called in the West. But what is their specific capabilities? Because there's a lot of skepticism over their naval assets. Yes, they have aggregately more ships now, battleships, than the US, but
Not more battleships. I don't think anybody has any battleships anymore.
sorry, well,
They have a few aircraft carriers that are building into task forces and so forth. But again, no, they have a very substantially greater military capacity than they had before. And in some categories, it is greater than what the United States has. I would point out that they have had no recent combat experience. In fact, when Chinese leaders would come to Washington back when there were regular exchanges, and I was the director of the CIA, I was often asked if I would allow them to come out and meet with me. And I always said yes, in part because at some point in our conversation, I would note now, as you all know, generals, I, of course, had 5 combat commands just as a general officer alone. Many of you had combat experience. Oh, maybe. Oh, I guess not. Because, of course, the last real combat experience any of them had would have been in that particular war after our departure in the late 1970s. And there's really been nothing all that significant since then. So, yes, they've built impressive forces. They've realigned their command and control structure to rationalize that to more of what we have in terms of regional combatant commands and joint forces and so forth. By the way, in certain categories of advanced technology, they're ahead of us. We have better AI, they have more applications, and you can go back and forth all the way along on all this. They have the stack. We're betting on this, they're betting on that. But at the end of the day, if you have not actually been in combat and really exercised, even if it's against less than peer competitors, I think that's a major disadvantage. And our forces have had enormous experience, and all of our mid-level and senior level commissioned and non-commissioned officers have had extensive time in combat.
So I was thinking of the word dreadnought. Shows you my knowledge when it comes to maritime military matters, General. But my last question for you is: you've discussed a little bit, you touched upon about the potency, but what's the propensity for there to be potential engagement between America and China over Taiwan? I mean, it's the classic end game question, but do you really think that's possible? I think it is conceivable given Xi Jinping's desire for national rejuvenation and the window that is closing. Most people point to 2027 or possibly 28. What would you share with the viewers about this element and whether Taiwan is?
So you've already answered the question. I think it's conceivable, obviously. Many things are conceivable. I don't know how likely it is. And frankly, let's remember that we get a vote big time. And that is if our capabilities are seen as substantial and impressive, and if our willingness to employ those capabilities is solid, not needlessly provocative. But again, these are the elements of deterrence: the potential adversary's assessment of your capabilities on the one hand and your willingness to use them on the other. And we have agency here. We can make decisions, and we are, although I'd argue that we need to accelerate the application of the decisions when it comes to transforming our capabilities, in part in view of lessons we should be learning from the war in Ukraine, and then also ensuring that there's no question of our willingness to use our forces if necessary, but that we do not want to be needlessly provocative. If we do that right, I think the likelihood is very low. If we don't, then I think it opens the question up a good bit more. But I'm hopeful, actually. And, one of the values of unconventional leaders, and certainly President Trump is that, as is Secretary Hegseth, is they're willing to take actions that others would not have taken. And one of those needs to be to blow up our military procurement system and start over. to recognize that the military-industrial congressional complex, as Senator McCain used to describe it pejoratively, not fondly, is that there are vested interests in existing platforms and capabilities and weapon systems, existing basing arrangements, existing maintenance contracts, all of this, that all the individuals in these different complexes, military, industrial, congressional, will say, yes, we need to change procurement, but don't start with the platform made in my district. Don't start with the aircraft carrier task force based in my district. Don't do this, don't do that. And I think there's got to be some really aggressive action in this regard to overhaul the overall system and ideally to drive it with the basic concepts developed by the Indo-Pacific commander and his subordinate commanders that then are operationalized in a variety of different ways, most important of which would be those that establish requirements that then guide procurement.